Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Yankees lose 2 of 3 to the Cincinnati Reds in Cincinnati, but they do salvage the last game of the series. They avoid the sweep thanks to Max Fried earning his MLB-leading 10th win of the season, and he has an ERA that is now 1.92. The only pitcher better than him is Hunter Brown of the Astros, who has a 1.88 ERA. So Fried's been unbelievable, and it happens to be a lot of the times where the Yankees lose games the game before Max Fried pitches, and so that's why he's kind of had this stopper moniker, 8-1 in those situations. The one loss was the one sweep that they had against the Red Sox, which was unfortunate, but also, he pitched really well in that game, right? He only gave up 2 runs in like 6 innings of work, so about as consistent as they come this year. And that's now 15 starts of no more than 2 runs allowed. I believe the only other pitcher in baseball is Garrett Crochet. That's the positive. And there's some other positives to speak about in this game as well. Game 3, which was the fact that you had 4 hits from Trent Grisham, 4 hits from Jasson Domínguez, but another series that the Yankees could have and should have easily won. And I think back to game 2 specifically. However, runners in scoring position was a problem all series long. Overall, it ends up being 5 for 43, which is obviously terrible. And look, there's just nothing that's been a problem in this stretch. It wasn't a problem when the Yankees were winning. It wasn't. The Yankees were one of the better teams in baseball with runners in scoring position. So I'm not going to say, it's like a year-long thing. But it has been bad lately. They were 0 for 12 in game 1. And I'm not even going to make a big deal about game 1. Alan Winans was the starter, and he was good the first time through, but the second time through he wasn't. They lost 6-1. But game 2 was a game that it's another extra inning loss. It was a game that they were up 3-0 in the 7th inning. Like, those are games that you got to win. So, the Yankees were swept by the Reds last year at Yankee Stadium. The Reds are a solid team. They really are. Like, do I think they're going to make the playoffs in the National League? Probably not. But if you threw the Reds in the American League, I'd feel a lot better about those chances. They're not. This is not a bad team. And like I said, they play well in Cincinnati. But Carlos Rodon, he's the one that deserved to get that 10th win, which would have technically been before Fried. They both have the same amount of starts, Rodon and Fried. So it would have more been a matter of the fact that Rodon kind of beat him to the punch, if you will. But that's not even the point. Like, Rodon pitched 6 scoreless innings, and I think due to the fact that it was really hot, it's been really hot, pretty much in not just the Northeast, but certainly in the Midwest and Cincinnati. So that was a factor, I think, in Rodon getting pulled from the game because he was only at 88 pitches. But I do think that it's fair to acknowledge that, right? Like, yes, do I wish that Rodon continued to pitch? Of course. But, you're in it for the long haul. So I understand not wanting to push him. But yeah, game 2 was really frustrating. We'll talk about that. More extra inning woes from this team. The offense just has not been good enough for the most part, especially as far as situational hitting and getting the big hit. Honestly, that's what it comes down to. So, but let's go back to the top. And look, like, one last thing I'll say before we go into the series, like, the Tampa Bay Rays are playing really good baseball. They are 1 game behind the Yankees, as hard as it is to believe. And as much as I don't think it's going to stay that way in the long haul, like, I do think the Yankees will put some distance between them and Tampa. But, like, look, you're about halfway through the season right now, just about, like a game shy of halfway through. And they're 1 game behind. And the Blue Jays aren't too far behind them. So, game 1 was a matchup between Alan Winans making his Yankee debut, and for the Reds, it was Nick Lodolo. Nick Lodolo, he kind of maneuvered his way through. Lodolo went 4 1/3 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, no walks, and 6 strikeouts. So, he threw 94 pitches. Like, the Yankees made these guys work. So it's not for lack of grind necessarily as far as the at-bats go. Like, they really are putting in, deep pitches and getting these starters out of the game early, but still, like, Lodolo did a nice job of navigating his way through. For Alan Winans, like I had said before, he gets the loss. He's 0-1. We'll see whether he gets another start. That remains to be seen. We literally don't know. I'll talk about that when I preview the Athletic series coming up. But 4 1/3 innings, 5 hits, 4 runs, no walks, and 1 strikeout. So the concern there, and also 2 hit by pitches. So don't love the lack of strikeout ability there from Winans. Was hopeful it'd be a little bit better than this. And the funny thing is, first 3 innings was really good, but not so much in the next inning plus. So in this game, the odd players out of the lineup as part of the rotation was Ben Rice and Trent Grisham. I mean, it really is truly a rotation. The only one that isn't really involved in this is Aaron Judge, like in terms of the outfield DH first base rotation, right? Because there's a couple of different segments, and Judge is the only one that's exempt from it because, hey, like even Cody Bellinger, who I would say would probably be the next closest one to not being set out, like he didn't play game 3. Like he is very much in this as well. That's kind of what I'm drawing from this, and deservedly so too, because of the fact that you are getting contributions just like a game 3. You got 4 hits from Dominguez, you got 4 hits from Grisham. Like you're gonna have them play. The one person that stands out to me as really being in danger of losing legit time is Paul Goldschmidt against righties. Like I think against righties, I think he might play less than 50% of the time in those situations. And that might even be being generous. And this isn't anything like against Goldschmidt. It speaks to like what Ben Rice has done. And with Stanton coming back and looking mostly good, I'd say. He hasn't homered yet, but it looks good. But I just look at Goldschmidt, as hot as a start as he had, and as much as he is so good against lefties, that's someone that I definitely think is going to be sitting a decent amount, especially if Rice continues to do his thing against righties. So again, it's a constant rotation, and it's always worth mentioning what the lineup is and who is out. And in the case of game 1, it was Rice and it was Grisham. So Yankees actually get the lead, and in fact, they would get the lead in all 3 of these games, which was a departure from what we had seen recently. Aaron Judge homers in the first inning, his 20th home run of the season. This game had a feel like the Yankees were going to really take off and run. Because remember, they won the last 2 games against the Orioles. It had that feel, and then unfortunately did not go that way due to the Yankees' inability to, produce more runs with runners on base. It was a quiet series for Judge, but yet he homers. And we see that a lot. Like he always finds a way to make an impact somehow within a 3 or 4 game series. And his biggest one, I would say, was really here with this home run off of Lodolo. We go, I want to talk about some of the miscues offensively. Top of the second, first and third, 1 out. Dominguez and Goldschmidt strike out. So missed opportunity right there. Then in the third, Bellinger leadoff double, Judge flies out to move him over, and then Stanton strikes out and Chisholm Jr. grounds out. Then in the bottom of the fourth, the Reds get going. And I also want to say first as well, Jose Trevino, this was his first series against the Yankees since the trade in the offseason, and Fernando Cruz makes his first trip back to Cincinnati as well. So it starts with a 1-out hit by pitch to Matt McClain, then an RBI triple by Elly De La Cruz, a play that Cody Bellinger probably couldn't have done anything differently in center field. And if Grisham was out there, it's probably the same result, but one that I feel like Bellinger, there's been a couple of defensive miscues. And the reason why I say is because he has looked so good defensively. Like there's a lot of the little things that Cody Bellinger does well. So I think it's only fair to me to bring up when things don't go exactly right. It's a little bit of a surprise. This one, not so much. We'll talk about one in game 2 that was a little bit more so. But that ties it up at 1. And then a sac fly by Spencer Steer gives the Reds a 2-1 lead. And then Gavin Lux homers, the former Dodger, his 4th homer of the year to make it 3-1. So, really, the Reds got to Winans in that inning. The 5th inning could have been something for the Yankees where Goldschmidt was robbed of an extra base hit at bare minimum. Jay Fraley makes a great play in right field. It eventually ends up being 2 on, 1 out. They take out Lodolo. They bring in the righty Scott Barlow to face Judge, and Judge flies out, and then Stanton strikes out. And then from there, it kind of unravels a little bit more on Winans. There's a hit by pitch. There's a single, and he's taken out for Ian Hamilton. And Hamilton gives up an inherited run. And the problem with Hamilton is a lack of consistency as far as throwing strikes. Like, he's not horrible, but he's nowhere near the pitcher that he was the last couple of years. And I think a big part of that is just throwing too many balls. So De La Cruz gets an RBI single, but it could have been worse. It ends up being a double play by Steer to end the inning, so it stays at 4-1. for the Reds. But then the Yankee offense, they start to be shut down at this point. Tim Hill replaces Harrelson in the 7th. In the 8th is where the Yankees really get their next best chance and last best chances. First and second, no out. Stanton strikes out, Chisholm Jr. strikes out, and Volpe grounds out. Apparently, there was a thought that maybe, and this makes sense, against the righty Santillan, that maybe they would go with Rice or Grisham and pinch it for Volpe, but they did not do so. But at least Boone acknowledged that it was possible that he would. So kind of a step in the right direction, I wish he actually did it. 8th inning, they leave Tim Hill in, which was confusing to me considering he had pitched a lot the day before. He had already pitched a decent amount in this game. And Elly De La Cruz, yes, De La Cruz is better as a lefty, but Tim Hill is not good against righties. So I would have just went to Mark Leiter Jr. right there, but Elly De La Cruz homers opposite field off the hill. His 18th home of the year makes it 5-1. And Mark Leiter Jr., he wasn't great either, although it's kind of an unfortunate run against him. Jose Trevino gets what is called an RBI single, which is kind of crazy. It was an infield. It was a play that Anthony Volpe should have made. And instead, Volpe kind of sat back on it, then doesn't make a great throw. And then Spencer Steer scores from second. So I don't know how Trevino gets I don't know how Trevino gets an RBI there. Sure, give him the single. But anyway, 6-1 Reds. And then Emilio Pagan comes in a 6-1 game in what was his third straight game pitching. He's their closer, so a little bit weird. And in fact, it almost cost them game 2. It really should have, but it didn't. And apparently the reason for doing this was because Judge was lurking. That was Francona's reason. I still find that bizarre that they would have done that in a 5-run game when he'd already pitched twice, that's 3 days in a row. Really weird. But it didn't really affect the Reds in terms of win-loss. It didn't. But that's what a game 2, because I feel like there's a lot to discuss there. And again, Yankees went 0 for 12 runners in scoring position in game 1. Game 2 is the frustrating one for me. Such a winnable game, for sure. And the Reds, this game 2 was the Reds' first win when trailing after 6 innings. And they were down by 3. They weren't down by 1. They were down by 3. They were 0-30 in the previous chances when losing after 6 innings. But Jonathan Loaizaga, and it wasn't only his fault, and some others contribute to the Reds tying the game and ultimately winning in extra innings. The odd players out in the lineup in this game were Jasson Domínguez and Giancarlo Stanton. Domínguez would pinch hit in this one. I feel like Domínguez has been the one that's probably sat the most. It's not by that much, but I think if you were to count it up, I think it's Domínguez. DJ LeMahieu would also be on the bench in this one, so Oswald Peraza would start at second. But anyway, Yankees are the ones that do take the lead. Although, let me give you some numbers first. Carlos Rodon, 6 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts. A really nice game for Rodon after he hasn't really been so great lately. But really, gets the ERA below 3 at 2.92, and he was very much in line for that 10th win of the season, but he didn't get it. To no decision. And then Chase Burns makes his MLB debut, the number 2 pick of the previous draft. One of the top prospects in baseball. Looked really, really good to start. And just in general, a very impressive outing. 5 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, no walks, and 8 strikeouts. So the 5 innings, 3 runs, that's not going to jump off the page. But the no walks, 8 strikeouts in your debut, really impressive by him. And he gets the no decision. He was on the hook for the loss. Didn't go that way. Let's jump to the 4th inning. Let's go there. Ben Rice homers to get the Yankees on the board 1-0. Ben Rice's 14th homer of the year. Then, later in the inning, with 2 out, Anthony Volpe with a 2-run triple. And Volpe's been struggling a lot lately. I still wasn't overly impressed by his at-bats this series, but still, with the Yankees starving for hits running the scoring position, they get it. And it wasn't a great play by the center fielder, to be honest with you. Like that should have been a single. And instead, Friedel trying to dive for it, and it goes past him. So it ends up being 3-0 Yanks. And, you're feeling pretty good about things, especially Rodon on the mound. Let's then go to the 5th, because this is a situation where Peraza ends up on second with an infield single and steal. Grisham strikeout, Rice line out, Judge pop out. So a little bit of a missed opportunity there. Then let's just go to the bottom of the seventh. And Rodon is taken out at 88 pitches, which I can understand it for the fact of the heat. Like, I also understand that there's pushback from people saying, hey, just toughen out. Rodon, he is like someone that wants the ball, right? This is not a pitcher that would shy away from that. And you figure in a 3-0 game, you can piece your way through 9 outs. Doesn't happen, though. And Jonathan Loaisiga was the one, and he's been good lately. Now, apparently, Loaisiga was not feeling well Monday, feeling ill. He was available for game 2, and we see what happens here. And then he actually flew back to New York for game 3. I think he's going to be fine. I don't think it's an IL stint, but he was dealing with something as far as his health. There's a 1-out walk to Tyler Stevenson, and it should have been a strikeout. The 2-2 pitch should have been called strike 3. It wasn't, and then he walks. Then Rhys Hines singles on a tough. I mean, look, Chisholm Jr., I don't love him at third. I really don't. And there's examples of this that we'll discuss more in game 3, I guess. But it was a hard hit ball, so I'll back off on it. But maybe someone else makes the play. Rhys Hines single. Then Jose Trevino with the single, an infield single. Volpe made as good a play as he could. No one's fault on that one. Bases loaded, 1 out. And the big blow is a Christian Encarnacion Strand bases clearing double to tie the game up at 3. And I felt like Cody Bellinger, they didn't give him an error. I think that if he fields it cleanly, either Trevino, they hold him at third, or they throw him out at the plate, possibly. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just how I felt. I felt like Bellinger messed up in the corner, leading to it being tied, which is really important because maybe they find the way out of it. That was tough, right? Because Loaisiga, this inning could have turned very differently if that Tyler Stevenson pitch was called a strike. It wasn't, and now it's 3-3. And you can't feel good if you're the Yankees at that point. Fernando Cruz, the former Red, comes on and finishes out the inning. And then let's go to the bottom of the 8th. Luke Weaver comes on. Now, Fernando Cruz had thrown 12 pitches. I would have considered starting him in the 8th from a standpoint of the bullpen is fairly thin, and you're in a tie game in that spot, and I just feel like you might run out of pitchers. That's kind of what did happen. The Yankees became, in a compromised situation by the end of it. But I digress. Luke Weaver pitches the 8th and pitches a scoreless 8th inning. So hopefully with him, he's getting better. He still doesn't look all the way there, but, he gets the job done. 9th inning is when things get interesting. Cody Bellinger leadoff single, and then with 1 out, Jazz Chisholm Jr. strikes out. And there was a bad 2-0 pitch that was called a strike that should have been a ball. Chisholm Jr. kind of loses his mind a little bit. The umpire, I think it was Mark Wegner, gave him some latitude, gave him some rope. He eventually gets tossed out of the game at the start of the next half inning. I fall on both sides of this. I think Jazz needed to calm down. You could tell he was ready to get thrown out. Like, as soon as I saw that, I literally said, he's going to get thrown out. And he did. Apparently, Jose Trevino kind of brought it to the home plate ump's attention. Hey, look at Jazz. Look at what he's doing. And Jazz was kind of talking more to himself than to the ump, but he was definitely emotional and not feeling great. And Jazz was like, why are you looking at me? And then the ump tossed him. So Jazz needs to definitely reel it in because look, as bad as it was, he was still up 2-1 on the count and his head was out of it at that point. So the inning ends. It's 3-3. Chisholm's ejected. So LeMahieu comes in to replace that spot. Peraza moves over from second to third. Then Devin Williams with a very efficient 9th inning. What I hadn't realized, it's a 1-2-3 inning for Devin Williams, which is good. He's been good lately. I didn't realize that Devin Williams is a purely 1-inning pitcher. I recall that maybe there was I thought maybe he had maybe a 4-out situation, but I guess if I were to look at Devin Williams' game logs, I guess it's purely 1 inning, which if that's the case, sadly, him pitching the 9th inning really does make more sense than it would I trust Luke Weaver more, everything being equal in a playoff situation. However, in terms of Weaver's ability to pitch multiple innings, you'd rather have that out there in the 7th and 8th than Williams, who can only go 3 outs. But again, that's another conversation for a different day. We go to extra innings. We know how bad the Yankees have been in extra innings on the road. And that would rear its ugly head again. They're now 0-5 in extra innings on the road, 1-6 overall. Austin Wells pops out to start the inning. You can't do that. You have to get the runner over by any means necessary, and he doesn't. And then Domínguez pinch hitting for Peraza lines out. Then Grisham walks, then Rice walks. And it sets you up for bases loaded, 2 outs for Aaron Judge against a pitcher in Santian who had been having trouble throwing strikes. And what happens? On a 1-1 pitch that's inside, he pops out. So I don't want to be overly critical of Judge. It's because it's not fair because of how amazing he's been, but he has been letting him down lately. He just has, right? Like, I'm not trying to make any grand statements here. I'm just saying what it is. Like, you want him up in that spot more than anyone, of course, but it is frustrating. Like, not to say he hasn't delivered in some spots as well, but you needed him there, and you need him to be a little bit more patient, and he pops out. Bottom of the 10th we go. JC Escara actually comes into play third base. Now, Escara would go on paternity leave before Game 3. He was actually supposed to start Game 3. That was the plan, but paternity leave changes that, so wishing him good luck with that. I would expect him to be back probably for the start of the Athletic Series. They didn't make a roster move as it was too late for them to get anyone up, but Escara played third base, so that may be a situation that presents itself every now and then, late in games such as this. Mark Leiter Jr. comes on at the bottom of the 10th and actually holds the Reds. Now, he had thrown 27 pitches the night before. Leiter Jr. ends up being used. He was taxed. Leiter Jr. keeps the game tied, which is not that easy to do, unless it's against the Yankees in extra innings. Runner on second, no out, he gets the job done. And the Reds, they have a really bad extra inning record as well. But the Yankees, poorness in extra innings, 1 out. Top of the 11th, the Yankees get a pretty fortunate run off of Connor Phillips. It's a Cody Bellinger granite to get Judge over, and then a wild pitch scores Judge. That's how they get their run. That is how they get their run. But hey, you'll take it. But now Mark Leiter Jr. is on, and remember, he pitched a lot the day before. He just pitched the inning before. It's hot. This is not what you wanted. Like, this is where it goes back to for me. I think Fernando Cruz maybe should have started the 8th, and everything kind of works its way differently. I would have pitched extremely carefully to Elly De La Cruz. The end result is kind of a fortunate De La Cruz infield single. I'm not saying I would have necessarily intentionally walked De La Cruz, but if you did it, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. I know he's the lead run. I know the risk, but I didn't love that they even went after him. Then where it gets, so now it's first, third, no out. And then Spencer Steele gets an RBI single. Then he gets 4-4. Then there's a wild pitch by Mark Leiter Jr. while Tyler Stevenson's up. Tyler Stevenson then walks. It's bases loaded. Pinch hitter Gavin Lux comes up, and it's a walk-off RBI single for Lux. So it's a bad loss in a long line of them. I think that's now 5 multi-run lead losses from the 7th inning onward. That's unacceptable. You have an at least 2-run lead in the 7th inning or beyond, and you lost 5 of those games. That's horrible. Yankees should have a much better record than they have. Let's go to Game 3. Yankees were able to avoid the sweep. And the odd men out in this game were Goldschmidt and Bellinger. So Max Fried wins, goes to 10-2. Only pitcher in baseball with 10 wins. The only ones with 9 are Rodon and Skubal. 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 run, and it was not earned. 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. For the Reds, it was Brady Singer who struggled. I mean, the strikeout numbers were good, but the Yankees did a good job against them. His loss brings him to 7-6, 5 innings, 6 hits, 4 runs, 3 walks, 9 strikeouts for Brady Singer. And the Yankees get on the board first. The crazy thing in this game, and last game, the Yankees, in Game 2, they were 1 for 9 runners in scoring position. This game, the Yankees were 4 for 22. Yes, 22 at-bats with runners in scoring position. And that doesn't include plate appearances, right? That doesn't include like a sac fly, for example, which occurred in this game. Crazy, the amount of players the Yankees got on. Like, they should have won by more than 6. But anyway, 2nd inning, it would be an RBI single by Grisham. Not going to go into the details of it because, LeMahieu struck out right before that with base sort of no out. LeMahieu, he has not been great, and I hope that he's not a big part of this team by the end of the year, but for now, it is what it is. But yeah, LeMahieu just, not very inspiring as far as what he's done. He's batting .240 with a .640 OPS, but based on what he did last year, we shouldn't really be all that surprised. But Trent Grisham with a big RBI single, surrounding a lot of bad shit. Judge strikes out with base loaded 1 out, and then Rice strikes out with base loaded 2 out. And in the 1st inning, Grisham had a leadoff double, and then Judge strike out, Rice strike out, and then eventually Chisholm Jr. strike out. So Grisham gets the one hit in the middle of this that gives the Yankees a 1-0 lead. Then in the third, Jazz Chisholm Jr. exacts a little bit of revenge off of what happened the day before, and he had some words with Trevino, like friendly banter, nothing overly serious. They were teammates last year. Chisholm hits a 2-run homer, his 11th homer of the year after a Stanton single to give the Yankees a 3-0 lead. Now with Chisholm, he has really been very good in terms of power since he's with the Yankees. I just wish for him that he would his skill set's so large that I wish that he would think a little bit more, hit the ball the other way, that type of thing. But look, there's no doubt Jazz is really one of the more impressive home run hitters in the league. And you wouldn't think that looking at him, but he really is. 11 home runs that he missed, what was it, over a month, right? 4 to 6 weeks or so. So that makes it 3-0 Yanks right there. Then the 1 run allowed was Jazz's fault, basically. Runner on second, 2 out. Spencer Steer hits a ground ball to Jazz that should have been just an out. But it's a throwing error by Jazz, and Rice goes off the bag, tries to keep in front of him, and doesn't, so Dela Cruz scores from second. Unearned run to Fried. Again, I don't like the LeMahieu at second, Jazz at third thing. I don't like it. When all is said and done, I hope Jazz is at second, and some of the Yankees can get a third baseman. That is my hope. So 3-1. Then the Yankees score in the 5th off of Singer. With the bases loaded and 1 out, Volpe gets a sac fly. The Yankees have been good in the sac fly department. You got to give them that. The only team that has more sac flies in Major League Baseball is the Diamondbacks. So that makes it 4-1. And this was a little bit scary where Ben Rice tagged up twice. It looked bad. I think Rice thought that maybe he went too soon. He ends up scoring. And so it's 4-1. Then in the 6th, the Yankees, off of Ian Jabot, the reliever, they score a couple more runs. Aaron Judge actually comes through here with an RBI double, so give him credit there. First and second, no out. He extends that lead, and then Giancarlo Stanton with an RBI groundout makes it 6-1 Yanks. Fried goes 7 innings. Again, he has been magnificent as a Yankee. And then from there, Fernando Cruz strikes out the side in the 8th. He's looking really good lately. If he can just work those walks out of his game, which is a big if. The strikeout stuff is really there and back in full force. And then, the Yankees score 1 more run in the 9th. Domínguez would lead off double. Eventually, it's an RBI single for Austin Wells. And Wells has struggled a little bit lately. Those numbers have kind of dropped down a bit. OPS down to the biggest thing is the OPS being down to 707 for Austin Wells. Not great. But he gets that RBI single. And for Domínguez, a 4-hit night. He got a couple of steals. 2 of those hits as righties. Grisham gets 2 doubles. So again, Grisham and Domínguez, 2 players that are very much in a rotation, deliver on some pretty big nights. And then JT Brubaker. He comes on and pitches a 1-2-3 inning for the Yankees to secure the 7-1 win. And they salvage the series. They lose the series, but they don't get swept. So still the only sweep, unfortunately, was to the Boston Red Sox. So now the Yankees will head over to take on the Athletics. So here's what this series brings. The Athletics, they are one of the worst teams in baseball. When the Yankees faced them in Sacramento, at that point, they were really one of the surprises. They were playing pretty well, but it's caught up to them. They're not a good team. They are, however, pretty on the road. Their record actually isn't that bad. Sacramento has been just tough for them. They're not good at home. That all said, this is a series that I would like the Yankees to sweep. However, the Yankees have not been playing great. And also, the Yankees pitchers in this series, although honestly, Will Warren and Clark Schmidt have been really good. You don't have Fried, you don't have Rodon, TBD in Game 3. So, look, I'm all right with 2 out of 3, but I really would like to get the sweep. The pitching matchups in this series: Will Warren against Mitch Spence. Mitch Spence was a reliever to start the season. Ben Rice had a grand slam off of Spence in Sacramento, but now he's been a starter lately, and he's actually done pretty well as a starter. Will Warren, he actually moves ahead of Schmidt as far as the schedule goes. Schmidt coming off of that 103 pitch outing, they're moving it back. And we've seen that before with Schmidt. I think they try to give him an extra day when they can. So Warren moves up. He pitches Game 1. Game 2 will be former Yankee J.P. Sears, the lefty, against Clark Schmidt. Now, Sears has done well against the Yankees when he's faced them. However, he's been really bad lately. He was pitching all right when the Yankees faced him that first time, and he pitched well. But again, he's been getting hit hard, and he's going to go against Clark Schmidt, who's been one of the best pitchers in the American League for the last couple months. And then game 3, Luis Severino makes his return to Yankee Stadium. The Yankees really beat him up good in Sacramento. So curious on this one. It's been a rough go for Sevy as an A. And then for the Yankees, it's listed as TBD. So it's 3 potential options. Alan Winans probably is still the most likely option, but it's the fact they're leaving it open tells you all you need to know. Carlos Rodon, he could, especially since he only did throw the 80 pitches, it could be Rodon for that Sunday start. Or, and this is the one that I don't even want to say it, but I'm going to, and I hope it's not this, is Marcus Stroman. He did not do well in his rehab outing, but I think he does line up for Sunday. So I think those are the 3 options. I think Stroman probably being the least likely, but don't be shocked if it is him also. So that's what you're looking at as the Yankees will head home for just a quick 3-game homestand, right? You had a quick 3-game road trip here in Cincinnati, and then just a 3-gamer against the Athletics before they hit the road. They'll take on Toronto and then the Mets. So schedule is going to start to heat up a bit as we get to July, but at the end of June here, Yankees aren't playing their best baseball. They do salvage this series with a great outing by Max Fried. They avoided the sweep, but they do lose 2 of 3 at Cincinnati against the Reds.